Welcome to my podcast number 14, I think. As I've said earlier, these are quite spontaneous podcasts, probably the only podcasts that are spontaneous on the internet. But anyway, for better or for worse, that's how we're doing it. And I think it's the best way to do it because I believe very much in the use of energy, and that's one of the subjects I want to talk about in this podcast. How do we use our energy? Of course, in this case, very much related to piano playing. Well, there are so many things I think that are important in this way, but a few things that I would like to mention and things I've noticed happening because just recently we've been watching a lot of international piano competitions, for instance. And what we see is how the pianists that are playing are using their energy. It's quite an interesting subject to follow and to look at how they actually approach the instrument. And then the question remains, how does it affect how everything sounds? Then the next question is, how does it actually affect the public's response? There are so many things connected with this. And I think that it's worth making a podcast around the subject of energy. I've been involved in a lot of marathon performances, really, and that is, of course, for me, one of the main things to know how am I going to use my energy for 4 hours in a performance. For instance, playing the complete Welker Temperata Clavier or playing Sorabji's Opus Clavicembalisticum or many other things, other pieces that are similar. And that is an interesting problem. How do you use your energy? Well, I've made a few points for myself. And one of the first things I've noticed, and really sometimes I get quite irritated with my own students when they're playing, and you get all these movements happening, and all this in the head. You see everything, every expression is more in the face than it is in the hands. I believe that these are the things that do it, and it's basically what we are doing with our arms, our hands and fingers. That is where all of the energy's got to be centered to that point. If we're doing this and all sorts of movements which are totally unnecessary to playing, somehow we're losing energy. And this is a pity because so many pianists will play much, much better when they do less of that. Just sitting there and just playing. This is just a quick demonstration instead of this. I don't think it's any good. Frankly, I don't like it at all. And that's just one of the things that I've noticed often happening. And I think really a great performance starts in a way with the posture. I would add one other thing. I think even great performance is when a performer can actually close his eyes and just play with the eyes closed. Just letting it all come out of the energy of the air, letting it all come out and not putting it all in. So much of this movement is putting it all in, and I want it to be taken out. I think in the greatest performers of the past, if you look at the way Rubinstein played, look at the way Godowsky played, and many other great, even Horowitz and others, how they played, they sat quietly. They didn't do anything. There's hardly a movement to be seen. Even Paderewski, what you do see is this is quite free and quite active. The way the arms are used, sure, that is necessary, but all of the body movements, no. Anyway, enough said about posture, perhaps. Well, there's a lot more to be said about it, but I think it's very important to really think about that with young students and how they are approaching the music. And then I have a few points that I've thought about are important. It's not only the way we play, but when we are performing a piano work, the left hand, we are actually always playing chamber music with our left hand. Our left hand is actually almost another instrument playing with us. So we've got to play together with the left hand. And I think so much music comes out of the left hand. So much music is not only in the melody line, but it's in all of the other lines, and especially the left hand. The way we play the left hand is important. I always suggest playing it in about 4 different ways to see what are the possibilities. How does it work? How does it feel? That feeling, I think, is essential. We've got to feel into the music. And that's one of the things I miss a little bit in many performances of young people. They're such talented young people, sometimes going a little bit over these things and don't really see how important it can be. Anyway, that is enough said about that. Then a few other things I would like to mention also, perhaps while we're about it. For instance, I like also to test myself on certain things. One of the ways I do that is, for instance, when I've played a phrase of music, listening to how many dynamic levels do I actually hear? Can I count them? Are they really clear enough to be counted? That already does say something. If they're not clear enough to be counted, well, probably they don't exist. I think somehow the possibility to be able to count something tells you that it's something that is there. You've got a concrete something. Whereas if you don't have the ability to count it, well, I don't think it's actually in existence yet. So counting how many different dynamics we have in a melody or in a phrase of music, that added to the way that we do it. For instance, I think very many things are important in the way we contact our keys. I've often said before, and I really, really want to repeat it, playing on the pads, the very cushiony part of the finger, I think is dreadfully important. I think in this way you really get much more connection with the music. And I think that's so important for getting the right feeling. So getting the feeling of the music and being able to reproduce that feeling from the way we are touching the instrument. So the actual process of actual touching the instrument. Many great pianists have mentioned the following, that it's very important to make use of the finger playing from the knuckle. So you make use of the finger as one entity, not in different parts, but absolutely from one part. So really that, well, for instance, that last not prelude from Chopin, if you, it's got that sort of cadence in it. And there's a certain sort of way of playing it. And I like to call that the choreography of the hands. We do need, I think, a choreography. You know, there was a wonderful pianist in the past who was, and in fact, he was actually, first of all, a violinist. And he changed to the piano because Paderewski once said, "Oh, what, you've got beautiful hair." Wow, what a reason to change from being a violinist to being a pianist. But he did. And actually, he did have very beautiful hair, but okay, that's another question. And what happened then is he took on the piano, and he was then confronted with many of the things I've already mentioned. How do you use your hands? How do you use your arms in playing the piano? And he then went to a recital being given by a very famous dancer, Isadora Duncan was the name. Was a very great dancer in the 20s and 30s, I think it was. And he said, these are basically from himself, he learned how to move on the piano. Well, it's all connected with what we've just been saying. Movement, yes, but the thing is how. And Duncan made a lot of waves in her way of moving. And she, in fact, what I've understood, insisted that there is always a wave. There's always a wave going. Smaller perhaps, or larger, but there's always something happening there. And so Harold Bauer, the name of the pianist I'm talking about, tried to incorporate that into his playing. And he did it. In fact, there's a wonderful film. It is unfortunately not a solo performance, but it's a performance with Ephraim Zimbalist, the violinist, and he's playing the second movement of the Kreutzer Sonata from Beethoven. It's really worthwhile watching. You notice how he absolutely makes use of the falling hand, and the way he's using his arms is something really to study and to watch. This is an interesting example of what I'm talking about. So these things, I think, are all important. I've myself learned a lot from this, because mentioning that energy, how do you keep the energy going for 3 or 4 hours? And especially in pieces like Sorabji's Opus Clavicembalisticum. How do you keep it going? And I think that's really by making good use of the energy, the gravity, the way the hand falls, the and so on. I won't oblige you to watch it for 3 hours, not at this moment. Anyway, these things, I think, do have some effect on the way we are using our energy. We've just got to have, I think we could almost say, if we relax and let it just come, if we are open and let it all come, I think it works. Anyway, it's worthwhile trying. So if you're a pianist, try it out. Just letting the movements be not always so big like this. No, that's not necessary. Smaller movements, but just only the arms and the hands and fingers. And see if you can direct your energy and absolutely direct not only the energy but the intensity into this area. And try, please, not to move too much with the body. Try to stop that a little bit. Anyway, just a few points from Grandpa Geoffrey.